Well, it's wonderful to be here in Jerusalem with you, and I'm so excited to be attending this conference. I'm bringing with me my mother, who has never been to Israel before, in her 83 years, and she is very excited to be here too. I thank Chen Mazig and Stand With Us for hosting me and bringing me here. I met Chen on social media, where his words were like a blinding light in a sea of darkness. There on Twitter, where there's just so much anti-Semitism, and it's unbelievable, actually. I've always been an outspoken person because I'm a comedian, and the subjects of racism, classism, and sexism were important subjects for me to lampoon and stand against as a proper socialist, like my father and, thank you, and his father before him, a Russian Jewish immigrant in Salt Lake City, Utah. Becoming more and more political since 9/11, I found myself one day asked by the former presidential nominee of the Green Party, the American Green Party, Cynthia McKinney, to carry the water for the left, as she put it, and to represent by running for the party's nomination myself. Perhaps because of the fact that a lot of people had no idea that I was Jewish, because I'm not the American stereotype, being from Salt Lake City, Utah, rather than New York or New Jersey. I've been privy my whole life to hearing things non-Jews say about Jews, which they might not say if they knew they were speaking in front of one. During my campaign about 2012, everything I'd ever believed about the left was severely shaken, and the scales began to fall from my eyes in many ways. And I had to admit that many of those I considered comrades were naked bigots who had absolutely no interest in peace between Israel and Palestinian Arabs at all, as I did. It was shocking to realize that what I considered criticism of Israel many, many times gave way to the regular garden variety anti-Semitism that I'd heard all of my life, which is basically, you know, the code word Rothschild every time you turn around. During my campaign, which I filmed as a documentary, I became more and more afraid of what I saw gathering in the United States. I saw first Jews and African Americans divided over American Israel policy, and Jews against Jews divided too. I spoke about Israel during my campaigns for president and was frequently shouted down by leftists, so I learned, because I'm a comic, to answer the totally pre-programmed questions with a real answer that came from me and not from any centralized NGO or group. That did stop people in their tracks for a minute or two, but they would invariably return to regurgitating the talking points they were being paid or self-appointed to regurgitate. I'm certainly not here to defend the indefensible. I don't do that anywhere. Israel has many things about it which need correction, like every single other state and nation on earth. May all the things wrong in this Jewish state be immediately addressed and reconciled. That is my prayer and the promise of Rav Kook, one of the founders of Zionist philosophy, that the nation, once restored to its land, will also be restored to our true national character, that of the light bearers of freedom, brotherhood, excellence, and expanding new vistas of intelligence. We Jews can be somewhat rude, demanding, and intransient, and more opinionated than most at times. We are a people who get quite tense after the terrible things that have been repeatedly done to us, and yet Jews don't care what religion other people are, and we would never dream of denying any religious minority their right to worship. Many religions and religious freedom itself are part of the diversity of Israel. We also believe that people have the right to be free of religion too. But by God, we lack the supreme gall and insensitivity of a typical left-wing peace activist trust funder living in Chicago to suggest that 1/3 of the world's surviving Jews should not be allowed to buy or own or live on land inside any Arab state after centuries of citizenship there, nor to be allowed to live in only one tiny place behind green line in our own homeland where we are called settlers and occupiers after Warsaw. In fact, the Arab Nakba of nearly 1 million Arabic Jews and the theft of their wealth of centuries followed the Shoah. Yet American groups like Code Pink and Jewish Voice for Peace and even J Street have yet to mention one word about any of that, though many Jews are in those groups. BDS is right-wing and fascist. Make no mistake. The fact that it pretends to be of the left helps to obscure the fact of the ethnic cleansing of Jews and Christians in all Arab states, happening since 1948 when the entire Arab world began its still ongoing boycott of Israel. Those who foster and monetarily support BDS against Israel are paid directly or indirectly by interests of those same now Judenrein Arab states where real tribal, racial, religious, and gender apartheid exist, unlike in integrated Israel. BDS is part of what I call the fake left. That peculiar left whose spokespeople are from privilege, like Ali Abunimah, whose father was the Jordanian ambassador to the UN, and Max Blumenthal, trust funder son of war profiteer Sidney Blumenthal. This left cares nothing about unions or working people, their wages, their health coverage, their fair share of the profits they work to produce, which is incidentally what the actual left lives, breathes, and fights for. This fake left of trust funders of privilege have created a profitable worldwide network to slander, threaten, blood libel Jews with the same trash used by the czars of Russia, Spanish Inquisition, Nazis, and Hamans throughout the witch-burning European Middle Ages, where hundreds of thousands, if not millions, of Jewish women and men were thought to be witches and BDS'd, then burned at the stake for the canard that we were the cause of the bubonic plague. The question I asked myself since childhood has been, why does anti-Semitism continue to exist despite its great cost to all of humanity? And I believe the answer is that it is the most profitable tactic, the greatest tool in the heist of all working people's wealth by the ruling classes, those educated sons of ambassadors, presidential advisors, those popes, imams, preachers, so-called men of God, professors, presidents, prime ministers, czars, nobles, chancellors, and royal blue-blooded pharaohs, kings, and queens. The rich and privileged feudalists know that ethnic strife, division, racial animosity, gender violence, debt, and lack of medical care or jobs help keep people distracted. They also know that if you add self-righteous religious fervor to the above and simmer it, you can get holy wars that go on forever, guaranteeing their families' dynasties remain unmolested. People in power pay handsomely for a special wordsmith to craft some concise genocidal slogans like, "From the river to the sea, Palestine will be free of Jews." The selling of weapons and the promotion of nuclear proliferation continues to be the most profitable business on earth for those who own the stock markets, all the laws, and all the people on earth. They could never sit in the same room with us here for 1 minute unless it's to promote some cockeyed idea they are selling at the moment, such as their just published revisionist history books in which Arabs or Aryans become the actual Jewish people and Jewish people become the Nazis. Revisionist historians of the fake left are really just the updated Holocaust deniers of the 1980s. When the far left and the far right think of freedom, both of them immediately think they need to rush to defend Nazis' right to speak in threatening condemnation of Jews, but never the other way around. Universities which allow revisionist history, and I'm speaking about America, also allow trash science, as happened in German universities under fascism. False science, false history, false narrative. The immoral and insane racist anti-Semitism of pharaohs and Führers never fades from the Jewish landscape for very long. BDS doesn't want peace, nor do they want peace negotiations. They use code words which expose that, such as the code word occupation, which is actually an imperialist term when applied to Israel. And you've probably noticed that they use that word a lot, getting all the mileage they can out of it, which, if their hated peace negotiations ever occurred, they would have to use instead the legally correct words, disputed territories. And that would just ruin their self-righteous, libelous fun. Disputed territories means the question of security for both sides will be addressed, to be resolved in good faith with honest dialogue between two parties seeking solution and redress. BDS uses the incorrect encoded word occupation as it applauds Abbas for refusing to negotiate peace and apologizes for his hate mongering and inciting for the murder of Jewish civilians who are all guilty, whether they are Israeli, French, or Brazilian. This helps to create theater for social media and, better yet, to further forestall peace talks until perhaps after all Arab Jews are not only expelled to Israel but driven into the sea and the state which offered them safety destroyed through intifada. These campus BDS factories are anti-truth, and the truth is they work very hard to silence their opponents' points, rather than to engage in civil communication and dialogue that leads to the actual redress and the employment of solutions which might actually work for the everyday people at risk. But to absolute fascists, negotiation means losing. Only by silencing the outraged opinion of those it wishes to exterminate can any fascist narrative continue to exist, because it is a lie whose center cannot hold in the threatening and inevitably victorious face of fact. The truth is, peace must be negotiated, and fascists never negotiate. That's how you know they're fascists. It's not going to happen until pressure is brought to bear by all intelligent and moral people everywhere who will no longer tolerate war for the profit of a few at the expense of the many anymore. First, they say Jews out of Egypt go to Palestine. And I remember when I was a little girl, everybody talking about fight for Palestine in my Jewish family, because Jews were called Palestinian then. Then they say Jews out of the Middle East go back to Germany or Spain or Poland where you came from, after we, the pre-EU, wiped our butts with your art, your savings, your lives, and the lives of your children and drove you to Israel. Well, we may have lost our moral compass there for a century or so, but now we fancy ourselves as peacemakers who desire justice for those people who swear to kill all the Jews in the Middle East, and those, especially those who don't wish to be minorities living under Arab rule. Obviously, that did not work, or those Arab states would have Jews living in them. In order to continue to be successful scapegoat farmers and to hold the Jews as their moral hostages, BDS racist Jew haters and their deluded Jewish best friends in the United States back boycotting Jews who want to settle freely in the Middle East, and not just in a tiny fraction of it. Boycott will help to isolate and disenfranchise Jews until such a time that from the river to the sea, all of UN partitioned Palestine will be Jew-free. Again, you cannot possibly make this shit up, folks. You can't make it up. The UN, EU, and the trust funder-led BDS left are all crazy. They refuse to see what's right in front of their faces, that Israel is a state full of millions of good people who want peace, that Israel is not a dream but a solid reality that is not going anywhere. Instead of building collapsing tunnels, Hamas should cease occupying the Palestinian people's funds and get on to rebuilding a lawful structure of protection for Palestinians instead of paying them to kill themselves and take a Jew or two along with them. Talk about anti-Semitism. Peace and equality are the biggest threat to BDS, and as an old socialist, I keep thinking that that is the real hope. We want to solve the problems that we are responsible for, but it's impossible without first of all agreeing that the larger problem is and has always been unaddressed, and that it is the issue of double standards. Let's start there and then proceed to matters of land. Without just and ethical redress for the 2,000-year-old use of double standards against a victim first removed from their land and then from the earth itself over and over again, the arrogant and ignorant who see themselves as righteous are just blowhards, liars, and bloodthirsty bigots. These campuses, BDS factories, are anti-truth, and the truth is they work very hard to silence their opponents' points, rather to engage in civil communication and argument and discussion that leads to actual redress and the embrace of solutions which might actually work for the everyday people at risk. Only by silencing, I already read this part, sorry. Boy, this got screwed up. Hold on, I got like one more sentence and then I'm out of here. What the heck? Here it is. Intelligent and moral people know that peace between Israel and her neighbors and cousins is not only possible but quite probable, with the creation of the right words at the right time. In the story of Esther, we learn that power is strung together with words, and it is words which can take it all apart. Truth and fact are the Jewish people's ultimate weapons against liars and revisionist erasers of our history as the people of Eretz Yisrael. So let's consider that we are here today in Jerusalem together as proof that we are indeed who we've always said we were. Thank you.